All right, so today we are doing our second part of orthodontic series and just announcing very important mocks for our enrolled as well as non-enrolled candidates. So for the enrolled candidates, this week is really action-packed and you had your RPD mock, which is your Prosto series second part. Then you're also will be having a health promotion second part mock this week, and you will be having the Ninja mock fourth part this week. Along with that, you're going to get August public mock over the weekend. So August public mock is actually the free mock, which is available for even non-enrolled candidates. So all the non-enrolled candidates, if you want to get that mock, please, my team has just shared the details. So, team, could you please share the details for how to get access to the mock over the weekend? And you can join our group and follow us on our Facebook page, on which the details will also be provided how to get access to the mock. Other than that, yeah, sounds good. This is a very dense, and actually every week moving forward would be densely packed with specialized mocks for our enrolled candidates. So anyone who's thinking to join our crash course, this is actually the time. We have still 6 weeks to go and we are still getting enrollments for our crash course. You can get it at a special discounted price. So if you want, you can message me on my WhatsApp and I will share the details of the crash course with you, where you can join it at a discounted price for the last 6 weeks, because these are the most densely packed weeks for revisions, densely packed weeks for the specialized mocks as well. So even the candidates who are enrolled, please make sure every week you have a lot of mocks that you have to practice, and they are exclusive specialized mocks with all new questions. They're not in UF1, they're not in UF2. All the questions in these weeks mocks would be extremely unique and new and for the specialized topics. So make sure you practice them all timely. All right. So we have to discuss in today's class three important topics in ortho. Last time we discussed the first part of the ortho series with missing canines and missing laterals and missing central incisor. I hope everybody understood the last part of our ortho series, where you can get any of those situations. These are very hot ADC style orthodontic topics. Today we'll be talking about overjet, overbite, and as well as open bite, because these are also the presentations, and as a general dentist you must still know what are the appliances which are used, what are the investigations that you would be performing, both clinical examination as well as your radiographic examination, the habits, etc., how to differentiate whether the occlusion, malocclusion is dental, whether it's skeletal, whether it's habitual or multifactorial. Today, you're going to be learning all about that. So I hope everyone's excited to learn these important topics today. Thank you so much, Aisha. So everybody get in the receptive mode and in the sponge mode, because there will be again very new concepts that I will be discussing today. I do not want you to miss out on any of these. All right, so we are talking about first overjet and overbite, and then after that we'll talk about the open bite, right? So they are all different presentations that can be presented in the exam to you. And what are the investigations, information gathering, cluster questions? Then what would be the diagnosis? What would be the management plan? What functional appliance? Where fixed therapy? Where specialist referral? Where interception can be done? Where the interception can be done by you, where interception will be done by the specialist, all that factors we will assess today, right? So most important in the ortho questions would be your information gathering cluster questions. This one, these topics would be heavily invested in information gathering cluster as well as diagnosis and management planning cluster. All right. So I hope you all are paying attention, and you can start, you can ask your questions towards the end when I complete the lecture. Till then, you can write down your questions on your notepads, and I will be asking you whether the concept is understood or not, so you can reply yes or no on the chat meanwhile. So it is an extremely important topic, increased overjet and increased overtime, overbite, because timely investigation and timely identification of these problems can actually resolve bigger skeletal problems. So what is overjet? Overjet is your horizontal overlap of the incisors, whereas your overbite is the vertical overlap of the incisors. So overjet is your horizontal distance between the labial surface of your lower incisor as well as incisal edge of the upper incisor. So it is a horizontal distance between the upper as well as the lower incisors when your posteriors are in maximal intercuspation, because this overjet can be brought edge to edge, but that would not be your maximal intercuspation. Agreed? So you have to calculate your overjet at maximal intercuspation only. That is your true overjet. Now it represents the anteroposterior relationship between your upper and lower incisors. Do you all agree with that? It's an anteroposterior relationship or a horizontal relationship. Please keep giving me yeses or nos, because these are the exam question content. When I'm asking you yes or no, these are exactly what you will see in the options, or these can be direct exam questions. Okay. So it is your anteroposterior relationship between, yes, ma'am is available. Ma'am is only talking, right? Ma'am's camera is only off. So it represents the anteroposterior relationship, and it gives you the relationship between upper and lower incisors, and is one of the most important parameters which are assessed during orthodontic examination. It should always be measured parallel to your occlusal plane using a periodontal probe or millimeter ruler, and it's always recorded in millimeters. Okay, so if they ask what is used, so you can use either a periodontal probe or millimeter ruler. Now, a normal overjet is approximately 2 to 3 mm. Okay. Normal overjet is approximately 2 to 3 mm. When this distance exceeds the normal range, it is termed increased overjet. So anything more than 2 to 3 mm would be called increased overjet. Now it appears to be usually a dental problem, but sometimes increased overjet can arise due to skeletal discrepancies, dental malpositions, soft tissue imbalance, or certain oral habits. Is that clear for everyone? So usually it might look like only dental problem, but it could be, this is also an exam question. Okay, so pay attention. It could be multifactorial of skeletal discrepancy, dental malposition, soft tissue imbalance, or oral habits. Therefore, the management will depend upon the identification of the underlying cause. Is it due to habit? Is it due to only local dental problem? Or is it due to skeletal problem or soft tissue pressure? Does it all make sense? So based on the etiology, the management will be decided. Now, what is overbite? Overbite normally is your normal overbite covers your approximately 1/3 of the lower incisor. So your upper incisor will cover approximately 1/3 of your lower incisor. When you have an increased overbite, which is also known as your deep bite, now mind you, deep bite is also again another ADC hot topic. Okay, like missing canine, missing lateral, missing central, and deep bite is also one of the popular, most hottest ADC exam topic. Now, increased overbite or deep bite occurs when there is an excessive vertical overlap of upper incisors over the lower incisors. So, overjet is a horizontal or an anteroposterior variable, whereas your deep bite is a vertical variant. Clear for everyone? It's a vertical overlap of upper over the lower incisors. Now, there is a clinical importance of this deep bite is that in severe cases, the lower incisors can contact the palatal mucosa behind the upper incisors and can result in a traumatic overbite. And that is why in adulthood, such bites are also contraindication to implant placement. Okay? Remember everyone? Because this can induce a traumatic bite. So concept received that these deep bites, lower incisors can contact the palatal mucosa behind the upper incisors, resulting in a traumatic bite. And that is why in adult patients where this is not corrected and upper incisor is missing, implant will be contraindicated because traumatic bites are contraindicated for implants unless it is corrected. Clear for everyone? Yes or no? Keep your questions, whatever there are extra questions coming in your mind right now, please write down on your notebook. On chat, I will give you all the time to ask in the end. Okay? But right now, there is so many concepts that I want to give today in this class. I want you to just be in the complete receptive mode. Okay? Now, clinical presentation, and I know a lot of you would be asking for repeating. That is why I'm requesting you, please make sure your attention is completely focused. I am repeating myself at least two to three times without asking. So if you're missing out even then, that means you're distracted. Please keep your distractions away. Okay? Now, clinical presentation and relevance for your increased overjet. What is the clinical presentation and the relevance for that? So, a patient who has increased overjet usually presents because of the upper front teeth appear prominent, right? Aesthetic problem would be there, and that is why he would come to you because of his upper front teeth will appear prominent. And you can see here on the picture as well, right? Patient presentation with increased overjet intraorally as well as extraorally. This is the example of a patient presentation with increased overjet extraorally. Can you appreciate the convex facial profile slightly because the mandible is in retruded position? Mandible is smaller. Can you also appreciate the hyperactive mentalis, the prominence of the lower lip, right? Can you also appreciate that? How it is bent inwards and then slightly outwards curvature. And there is also retruded mandible. Although mandibular angle is not clear here, on your lateral cephalometrics, you will also assess the mandibular plane angle, which is a very important factor when you're assessing your horizontal growers or vertical growers. Can you memorize these two terms? Horizontal growers and vertical growers. So in your deep bite, patients are usually horizontal growers. Mandible mostly grows horizontally but fails vertically. Whereas in anterior open bite, mandible grows more vertically than horizontally or anteroposteriorly. Okay? I'll come and in depth talk about that also, but for now I want you to understand these two terms, horizontal growers and vertical growers. Okay? Now, an increased overjet is rarely caused by a single factor. Usually, it comes from a combination of skeletal, dental, soft tissue, and habit related influences. That is why, when you are doing a diagnosis, the clinician must identify the primary cause because treatment depends on identifying the correct underlying problem. Rather than just camouflaging and correcting the overjet, you have to identify the underlying problem. Do you all agree with that on me? So when you have an increased overjet, it can predispose the person to teasing and upper incisor trauma as well, right? And it can lead to lip incompetence as well, which leaves the incisors unprotected. When overjet is too much, the upper lip and lower lip will not meet. right? Can you see here? The upper lip and lower lip are not meeting and there is a slight gap. And teeth can also be protruding outside of that. So especially, can you please memorize the value also? I'm going to give you the value. So when the overjet exceeds 9 mm, the trauma risk gets doubled. So anyways, your increased overjet predisposes the patient to trauma, right? Because it leaves the incisors unprotected. But any overjet which exceeds 9 mm makes him doubled exposed to trauma. Anyone remembers? I guess we have done this question in UAF1 as well, where the patient had overjet and he came to you with a complicated fracture. We talked about the management. We did talk about the mouth guards, but we also talked about correcting the overjet. Anyone remembers here? So see how orthodontic concepts are interspersed between the universe of UF1 and UF2. I'm telling you that how ADC repeatedly throws these concepts here and there, and these trauma relationship and everything. These are, unless you are aware of them, unless you have knowledge about them, then in the exam it can scare you, right? But if you have knowledge about it, if you have understanding about it, then in the exam, these questions will not scare you. Am I making complete sense here? Is everybody understanding the relevance and importance of knowing these concepts? Because these may look like, oh, tiny, minute detail, but when an exam this shows up, it shows up as an entirely new question. Okay? So that is why it's crucial and important to know and understand these values. So anything more than 9 mm doubles the risk of trauma. Can you also memorize that? Okay. Now, when you're taking history, it should be determined whether the patient's concern is aesthetic, functional, or related to repeated trauma. You must also inquire about previous injuries to the maxillary incisor. We have had an SBQ like that in UF1. Then difficulty to achieving lip closure would be there. Speech problems can be there. Thumb sucking habit can also be there. Family history of similar facial features can also be there. These questions will help you distinguish between a skeletal problem and a dento-alveolar problem. Thumb sucking usually will give you dento-alveolar problem, right? Less likely to give you skeletal problem. Agree? So that is why identifying what is the reason, underlying cause is important, because that will give you the correct management, right? So causes can be skeletal pattern discrepancy. A skeletal discrepancy which is commonly linked with your increased overjet is what? Can you write down on chat? It is your classic class 2 div 1, right? So class 2 div 1 is your most common, significantly associated with increased overjet. Then it can also occur in, but it can also occur in class 2, class 1, and very rarely even in class 3 sometimes, if the incisors are retroclined in lower and extremely proclined in anteriors, right? So skeletal can be class 3, but rarely it can also have increased overjet in class 3 as well, because of the flaring of the incisors in upper and retroclined incisors in lower, right? So in most patients, your overjet would be because mandible is retruded rather than maxilla being excessively protrusive. So in most situations, it is the lack of mandibular growth rather than maxillary excess that leads to this increase overjet. Can you memorize that? So in exam, if they ask you what is the most common reason, is it maxilla excess or is it mandibular deficiency? Please write down on chat what is your received concept here, which is more responsible for the excessive overjet, retruded mandible or maxilla being protrusive. Mandibular deficiency. Absolutely correct. So most likely it is the mandible which is retruded rather than maxilla being excessively protrusive responsible. Now, in your class 2 patients who have a convex profile and a retruded chin, you should always suspect mandibular deficiency as the primary cause of increased overjet. Am I making full sense here? So far, so good. All the concepts coming together. These are multiple exam questions. The concepts that I'm giving you right now are direct answers to your questions. Now, soft tissue influence. Other than the skeletal pattern, there can be soft tissue influence also, which can be responsible for these things. Can anyone tell what can be the soft tissue, which is most importantly playing its role? Which soft tissue can affect most? Yes, your upper lip can be short or incompetent. First thing. Yes? So, first soft tissue effect can come from your upper lip being short or incompetent when it cannot adequately restrain the upper incisors. All right, number one is upper lip. Is that clear or not? Stop writing tongue. It is not tongue at all. Tongue, if at all, is associated with open bite, not with your increased overjet. So, can you all please drop tongues here? Everybody, anyone who wrote tongue, please know that is wrong. Can you now unlearn that incorrect topic, incorrect concept, and learn the new one? Because that is why what I felt also, we all come with some lot of unlearning to be done, right? Is that also correct with ADC? Especially when I've seen with every batch, is lot of unlearning has to be done. So please drop your tongues. All right. Tongue is not involved with increased overjet. Now, can you unlearn everything that you know and learn the correct things? Can we do that? Is everyone ready? Right? All right. So the soft tissues which are responsible and associated with your overjet, number one is your upper lip being short or incompetent. It cannot adequately restrain your upper incisor, which allows them to procline. At the same time, lower lip can become trapped behind the upper incisor, producing an anterior oral seal. So there is a continuous pressure from the lower lip which pushes the maxillary incisors forward, right? While retroclining the mandibular incisors and increasing the overjet more. So it is called your lower lip trap. Absolutely correct, Arshia. Right? So can you remember it becomes a lower lip trap where upper lip is short and incompetent, lower lip becomes and it cannot restrain the upper incisors. It allows them to procline. Now after your upper incisors procline, the lower lip becomes trapped behind them and it further pushes the lower incisors internally, so creating further increased overjet. Everybody understood the lower lip trap. Upper is short and incompetent, allows the upper incisors to come out. Lower one gets trapped behind those upper incisors then and keeps pushing your lower incisors retroclination. Okay, so that becomes a trap. Second soft tissue factor that is involved is your hyperactive mentalis muscle, which is often which contracts the chin muscle to achieve the lip closure. So in such patients, to achieve the lip closure, mentalis will automatically become hyperactive. Pay attention please, Rahul. Okay. So mentalis is kind of becoming compensatory hyperactive to achieve the lip closure. Does that make sense? So although it will compensate for the lip incompetence, the muscle activity tends to retrocline the lower incisors and further will increase the overjet. So soft tissue imbalance is often secondary to the skeletal pattern, right? Soft tissue imbalance will be often secondary to your skeletal pattern, but once it is established, it will continue to worsen your dental overjet. Another factor is digit sucking, which is your thumb or finger sucking, right? So persistent thumb or finger sucking after the age of 4 to 5 years can produce characteristic dentoalveolar malocclusion. So age group is 4 to 5, after which it can produce dentoalveolar alveolar malocclusion. Now, during sucking, the thumb applies pressure to the palatal surface of upper incisors, right? It can cause incisors to procline and puts the pressure on the lower incisors, making them retrocline. Can everybody imagine putting the thumb in the mouth or digit in the mouth, proclining force on upper incisors and retroclining force on the lower incisors? This combination increases the overjet. It will also interfere with the eruption of anterior teeth, often producing an anterior open bite as well. So, thumb sucking is also associated with open bite. Is that correct? Thumb sucking will also produce vertical pressure on the incisor, so it will also contribute to the open bite or your increased overjet as well. Then also with the cheek pressure, it can constrict the maxillary arch and lead to posterior crossbite as well. Now I am giving you all the possible concepts all combined, whatever can go on in the mouth. Are you all registering these concepts? So now it is associated with your increased overjet, thumb sucking. It is also associated with your anterior open bite, and it is also associated with posterior crossbite, with the cheek causing constriction of the maxillary arch and high palatal arch as well. Now this, all right, guys, can you hear any background noise in any case? All right. So everybody, and is my speed too fast? I think I have a lot to cover as well, but I'm not going that fast as well. Okay, because we have a lot to cover as well. And I'm repeating as well, no? I'm kind of reiterating myself as well, repeating the concepts. Okay, thank you for that. So now, the severity of these changes depends upon the duration, frequency, and intensity of the habit rather than simply whether the habit is present. So, just because a habit is present in a patient doesn't mean he will have all these malocclusions. It will depend upon the duration of that habit, frequency of that habit, and intensity of that habit as well. Okay? Now, another possible reason for increased overjet is crowding. Crowding may occasionally increase overjet if it causes your labial displacement of the maxillary incisors, right? Sometimes in crowding also, so sometimes the teeth can be crowded and it can lead to labial displacement of the maxillary incisor or lingual displacement of the mandibular incisor. In both these situations, jaw relationship can be class 1, but altered tooth position can create excessive horizontal overlap. So this is crowding is your where your skeletal is class 1, right or wrong? So now comes your combination of factors. So in some patients, usually increased overjet can be multifactorial. For example, a patient can have a mild mandibular retrusion. He can also have lip incompetence, and he can also have in combination thumb sucking habit. So all three are contributing to that. Lip incompetence, thumb sucking habit, as well as mild mandibular retrusion, right? So in these situations, the overjet can be extremely prominent. That's why when the treatment planning is done, it should always address every contributing factor and not just camouflage the protrusion of your upper incisors. Understood? So when you have soft tissue problems, skeletal problems, and habit problems, your job is not to just correct the overjet dentally, but also to address all the three problems. Now, clinical presentation and relevance for increased overbite. You understood everything about overjet for now, right? The clinical presentation and relevance and the factors associated. Now, let's talk about overbite, which is your deep bite. So, overjet, we just learned. Now, let's talk about overbite. Patients who have increased overbite may present with excessive overlap vertically of your upper front teeth, which makes it difficult in biting, or trauma to the palatal mucosa behind the maxillary incisors. When you have severe deep bites, lower incisors can actually traumatize the palatal tissues, which can cause pain, which can cause ulceration, also cause gingival recession. It is called traumatic overbite, and I talked about it as well. Here, implants would be contraindicated in such deep traumatic bites. Okay, clear? Now, this is the picture of the patient with overbite. Anterior occlusion is seen. This is the anterior occlusion on presentation. Now, the condition can also lead to excessive wear of the incisal edges, particularly when deep bite is also associated with parafunctional habit. So, there can be excessive wear of incisal edges as well. Now, clinical examination would include the assessment of how much is the palatal trauma. Are maxillary incisors mobile? Because of your traumatic bite, even the incisors can become mobile. Gingival recession can happen. Periodontal health can be affected. Loss of attachment will be there if recession is going on. And what is the amount of lower anterior crowding? As all these factors combined will influence your diagnosis as well as your treatment planning. So what are the causes of increased overbite? Now, everybody, we discussed the causes of increased overbite. Everybody has complete understanding now. Skeletal, soft tissue influence, digit sucking habits, crowding, and combination of factors, right? Now, let's talk about the causes of increased overbite. Also has skeletal pattern, growth pattern. Now, I talked about growth pattern. I gave you like two terms to keep in mind. Growth pattern of mandible, horizontal growers or vertical growers. So your horizontal growers are your deep overbite patients, and your vertical growers are anterior open bite patients. Can you memorize that please for me? Okay, so facial height would be shorter in horizontal growers and facial height will be longer in vertical growers. Yes or no, please? Because mandible is growing vertically, so facial height would be increased. I am repeating myself, Ala. You don't even have to tell me. I mandatorily repeat myself. You just have to hold on, be patient, and I might ask the question in any way or something. You will get the repeat. But when you start asking, you miss out what I'm speaking next. So horizontal growers will have your deep bites and vertical growers will have anterior open bite. Is that clear for everyone? I've repeated that 3-4 times now in this lecture. Okay. And now can you all tell me, when horizontal grower will not have enough vertical height, the facial height will be shorter. Whereas in a vertical grower, mandible facial height will be longer. Clear or not? Yes. So this is one factor you have to keep in mind, that if an exam it asks you that your deep bite is associated with horizontal growers or vertical growers, now tell me, Afra, you tell me, and Allah, you tell me. If you have a deep bite, will you have a horizontal grower or will you have a vertical grower? No, Allah, when you have a deep bite, it's a horizontal grower. Anterior open bite is your vertical grower, so increased facial height, Allah. Can I show you one picture you'll always remember? Okay. I don't have the facial profile of the deep bite patient, but open bite patient I have. Can you all see this picture? This guy has an anterior open bite and he's a vertical grower. Can you appreciate? His mandibular angle is so increased. Can you appreciate that? From your sella-nasion point to the mandible angle, can you see his mandibular plane angle is increased? He's a vertical grower. Allah, Afra, can you see that? Is he a long face, Allah? And that is why he has an anterior open bite. Clear now? Now both of you'll not confuse in this vertical grower. So this guy, you can call it any time. An exam can use various terms to confuse you. Anterior open bite, vertical growers, increased mandibular angle, mandibular plane angle, right? All these three, or long facial height, all these terms can be used to describe an anterior open bite, right? These can all be associated and used as interchangeable terms. So anterior open bite can be associated with increased mandibular angle, also known as vertical grower or known as long facial height. Is that crystal clear for everyone now? And your deep bite is opposite of your anterior open bite. Here there is no vertical overlap. In deep bite there is excessive vertical overlap of incisors. Yes or no, please? Anterior open bite and deep bite are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. So now if anterior open bite is a vertical grower and in deep bite it is opposite of that, so that means it's a horizontal grower. There is no vertical height of the mandible enough. Clear? So he would have a shorter face height. And when you have a short facial height, even the mandibular plane angle would also be lesser because it would be more flat. Correct or not correct? So mandibular plane angle will also be shorter there. And mandible would be a horizontal grower, right? And facial height will also be short. Is it not all interrelated when you connect it and understand it instead of mugging it? Don't mug it up. All right? Clear for everyone? Now tell me, all good or no? All right. Let's go back. Where were we? So we were talking about the etiology, right? Of the overjet. Yes. So we were talking about it, and the causes of increased overbite are skeletal, then growth pattern. So growth pattern is clear for everyone now, and soft tissue influence, and then dental factors. So these are the various etiological factors. Let me explain each of it. So skeletal pattern in deep bite, can you all tell which classic malocclusion is associated with deep bite? It's class 2 relationship and a reduced lower anterior facial height, right? And class 2 div 2, right? Where there is retroclination as well. So there is reduced overjet as well. Now, because the lower third of the face is short, right? There is excessive vertical overlap of incisors. Now, other reason other than skeletal is the growth pattern. So growth direction, so maybe the jaws may not be in class 2, they might be in class 1, but vertical growth would be limited in maxilla. It is growing anteriorly and horizontally, but it is not growing as much vertically. So growth direction of the mandible is an important role in determining the vertical relationship of incisors. Patients who have horizontal mandibular growth pattern tend to develop a deeper bite because mandibular would rotate forward during growth, reducing the lower facial height and increasing the vertical overlap of the incisors. I just explained you the growth pattern, horizontal growers. So it's clear for everyone, right? There would be lack of facial height and mandibular plane angle will also be less. Now, in contrast, your vertical growers are more likely to develop an anterior open bite rather than a deep bite. That is also clear for everyone. Patients who have vertical growth pattern, they are likely to develop an anterior open bite rather than a deep bite. And horizontal growers are likely to develop deep bite. Wonderful. Then comes your soft tissue influence. So soft tissue influence in the tooth position and facial growth, everyone recognizes that, right? So in patients who have reduced lower facial height, lower lip often lies high against the upper incisors because there is no stretch vertically. So lower lip is kind of lying high against the upper incisors. Correct or not? Otherwise, if it was growing vertically, lower lip will lie next to the lower incisors. But because there is no vertical, no, because there is no vertical height, so lower lip will be parallel to kind of your upper incisors, right? Because there is no height. So this altered lip posture also tends to retrocline the maxillary incisors. Now remember, in your overjet situation, upper lip was short and incompetent and not putting any force on incisors, so upper incisors were kind of proclining. Now in this situation, because of the lack of the facial height, the please pay attention, this is very crucial. In this situation, there is lack of facial height, so lower lip kind of lies on the upper incisors because there is no height, and then the lower lip will continue to put pressure on the upper incisors and make it retroclined and causing deep bite. Okay. So this altered lip posture tends to retrocline your maxillary incisor, which is a classic feature seen in your class 2 div 2. That is why you have retroclined incisors in class 2 div 2. Understood, everybody? Because that is seen with the horizontal grower, lack of facial height, and lower lip lying next to the upper incisors, retroclining it. And then other than that, a soft tissue factor associated is hyperactive high lower lip, which is in association with reduced lower facial height, leads to bimaxillary retroclination. So other than upper also, it can lead to bimaxillary retroclination. Lower incisors can also retrocline. Now, what are the dental factors? Again, dental factors can either produce or worsen increased overbite. One important cause is the absence of well-defined cingulum stop. Everyone remembers in your dental anatomy, upper anterior palatal surface having a cingulum, right? So normally the lower incisors contact this cingulum during occlusion and limits the further eruption. So during eruption, when the lower incisor hits the cingulum, it indicates, okay, stop erupting, this is the height. But if that cingulum is less prominent or absent, then the lower incisors can also continue to erupt, increasing the vertical overlap and making the bite deeper. What is the significance of it? So significance of a traumatic overbite or a deep bite is that it can become traumatic when the lower incisors start impinging on the palatal tissues behind the upper incisors during occlusion. And patient can come to you with a complaint of pain, ulceration, bleeding from the palate. And not every increased overbite will be traumatic. A traumatic bite will be diagnosed only when there is an excessive vertical overlap which is causing injury to the palatal soft tissues. So you all agree, not all deep bite would be traumatic. You will have to find the symptoms associated with it and signs associated with it. So clinical assessment to be done for increased overjet and overbite. How would you clinically assess these factors? So clinical assessment is done. First, increased overjet or overbite should not be assessed by measuring just the incisor relationship. That is a clinical finding, not a complete diagnosis, because diagnosis has to come based on the etiology, whether it's your skeletal, soft tissue related or habit induced, right? So take complete history, then do complete clinical examination, which should include both extraoral as well as intraoral examination. Now, because soft tissues are involved, lips and mentalis, etc., so extraoral assessment is also crucial. You all agree with that? With extraoral examination, you also get to see the facial profile, lip incompetence, and lower anterior facial height, soft tissue function. It can help you identify the underlying skeletal problem, right? So intraoral exam, you will assess the amount of overjet, amount of overbite, incisor inclination, molar relationship, so angles classification, canine relationship, crowding, spacing, arch form, any oral habits, any tooth wear, periodontal status, and any trauma to the palatal mucosa. These are the things that you will assess clinically. It's all information gathering cluster questions, so you know that these are the things that you will assess, right? Then you will also do cephalometric analysis. In cephalometrics, you will require SNA angle, SNB angle, ANB angle, mandibular plane angle, lower facial height, incisor inclination. All these you will assess from cephalometrics as well, which will help you distinguish whether it's skeletal problem or dental problem, right? So you can guide the appropriate treatment planning. Now, because we know if it's a growing ears of the patient and it's a skeletal problem, you can use functional appliances. But if it is only dental problem, functional appliance will not be useful and you will have to do fixed ortho appliance. Okay, so that's why you need to first find whether it's skeletal or dental, and then based on the age of the patient, whether you do the functional appliances or fixed appliance therapy. So a lateral cephalometric radiograph will help you determine whether the increased overjet is due to skeletal discrepancy or due to just abnormal tooth position. It will help you evaluate anteroposterior jaw relationship and vertical jaw relationship. And also what is the inclination of incisors. So important cephalometric values are A and B angles. So everyone knows normal skeletal relationship or class 1 is 2 degrees plus minus 2 degrees, right? So 0 to 4 degree is kind of normal, class 1. And then anything more than 4 is skeletal class 2. And anything less than 0 is skeletal class 3. Do you all agree with that? So you can say 0 to 4 is a range in between all the class 1 comes. Ideal class 1 is 2 degrees plus minus 2 degrees. Okay, that's your normal class 1. Anything more than 4 is class 2, less than 0 is class 3. And in a patient who has increased overjet, and if, for example, there is an ANB of 6 degrees, you can confirm that your overjet is the cause of skeletal class 2 pattern, right? And the underlying factor would be maxillary excess or mandibular retrusion. A quick test for you. What is the mainly cause of it? Mandibular retrusion or maxillary excess? Mandibular deficiency. Absolutely correct. So now how will you manage the increased overjet? So for a growing patient, especially prepubertal, right? Prepubertal patients with growth and you have a skeletal factor, your mandible is deficient. Would you rather not want your mandible to be growing and catching up? So functional appliances would be indicated and is a preferred approach. Functional appliances only are contraindicated when your lower incisors are also proclined, as they induce for, because when you use a functional appliance, it leads to mandibular incisor proclination. So if an already existing dental proclination is present, in that case, functional appliance is a contraindication. Can you memorize that? Lower incisor proclination is a contraindication to a functional appliance therapy because they on their own also induce further proclination, right? So until the growth is complete, it is advisable to retain the result by night only wear of the functional appliance. When you are correcting it, it's to be worn whole day. But after correcting it, retention is still done when when your growth is still going on by night only wear of the functional appliance, which is the most common appliance used for your class 2. Anyone remembers? TB. I'm giving you, yes, absolutely correct, Rahul. Twin block is your intraoral functional appliance, right? So twin block appliance consists of upper and lower appliance incorporating buccal blocks which have interfering plane about 70 degrees and which postures the mandible forward on closure. So what it does, it positions the plane of your block, right? The twin block appliance. The buccal block which is incorporated has an interfering plane at 70 degrees which positions the mandible in a forward position on closure. It works by using forces generated by what? Orofacial muscles, tooth eruption and dentofacial growth. So it uses the normal myofunctional forces and achieves the mandibular growth and used in the growing age of the patient. Correct? So what can be the issues with these, right? So it can sometimes, as a side effect, can also cause posterior open bite, right? So you have to make sure you are timely investigating and identifying if a posterior open bite is developing so that it can be adjusted and the posterior occlusion can be established. All right. So this is during your growth stage only. Right? So following your overjet correction by twin block therapy, sometimes you can have a posterior open bite developed. And when you have this identified, you will ask the patient to later proceed to wear the appliance part-time and to adjust the twin block so that the posterior occlusion is established. Okay. Now comes the management of your overbite. So deep bite correction is also getting asked in exam, right? And to understand the management of deep bite, we are now taking an example of this patient who's 10.5-year-old boy, has class 2 div 2 malocclusion in late mixed stage on class 2 skeletal base, and there is reduced lower facial height along with traumatic bite. Can you see and appreciate? It is completely overlapped vertically. And the traumatic bite is on gingival palate to the 1-1 and 2-1, and labial of 4-1 also there is some traumatic injuries. The patient also has upper and lower arch mild crowding, and this is the patient's occlusion on presentation. Now, when you are seeing this patient, the aim is to relieve the upper arch crowding, reduce the overbite, correct the incisor relationship to class 1, correct the molar relationship also to class 1, and then retain the corrected occlusion as well. Now, in a growing patient who has class 2 and deep bite problem, a growth modification using functional appliance should be the treatment of choice in a growing patient because it's still skeletal, right? When you have the skeletal problem in a growing patient, you would still want first the appliance therapy. Now in this appliance, along with appliance therapy, there will also has to be some dental correction simultaneously. Can you please remember that? In your increased overjet, right? You did not have to do any dental correction simultaneously. But can you remember in deep bite, along with the myofunctional, you will do some dental correction. Now, have you noticed in UF2, we have been doing the questions in the latest ortho questions, where you will do only appliance, where you will do other dental corrections, where you will do fixed after that. All these combinations have ADC has been giving you or not? So now you know clearly when you have class 2 div 2 with skeletal problem and increased overjet, you will only use first myofunctional. No need to dentally correct first. But here, because the incisors will interfere. See, for mandible to go out, this locking, right now, can you see the maxillary incisors are locking the mandibular incisor behind them? Do you think with the same occlusion, your mandible can grow forward if it is remaining interlocked in front of your deep, deep bite? No. So now you understand the reason here why, along with allowing the mandible to grow forward, right? Mandible you will allow to grow forward and vertically as well, but you have to unlock this lock. Can you imagine this situation? You are giving an appliance to encourage the mandibular growth and correct the underlying skeletal relationship. But you also have to unlock your lower incisors behind the uppers. Does that make sense? Yes? So that will be achieved by two things. One, you will give an upper removable appliance. You will first procline your 1-1 and 2-1 in this case because they are also retroclined. It is class 2 div 2. So there is also retroclination of incisors. So you will use Z springs. Z springs yes, absolutely correct, Akshita. Beautiful. So Z springs to 2-1 and 1-1 because it's only two teeth specific proclination. Then to move them ahead, do you require some midline expansion screw? Because without space, can your incisors come forward? No, right? So you will require some midline expansion screw as well to create the space in midline so that because see, your central is locked with your lateral here. Central is locked behind your proclined laterals here, right? And then you will give your full palatal acrylic coverage with flat anterior bite plane. Okay? And bite plane should be given to the height of your 1-1 and 2-1, which will allow the posteriors to erupt, right? And deep bite, corrected. And a little bit of posteriors to erupt, so that will also increase the, raise the bite, right? And also will unlock the mandible. Yes or no, please? Can you all imagine the situation and management plan that I just gave you? What all you did, right? So that springs to 2-1 and 1-1. Midline expansion screw. Adams class, of course, will go on the posterior teeth because you have to retain the appliance. Then full palatal acrylic coverage with flat anterior bite plane. Bite plane will correct the bite, posteriors will supra erupt, right? And as the treatment progresses, addition of cold wire acrylic to, to your flat anterior bite plane can be made chair side adjustments so that the overbite reduction until your overbite reduction has been achieved. Okay, so you can slowly add acrylic to your bite plane till you have achieved the desired raising of the bite. Understood? And along with that, then a functional appliance will be given. And in the above type of case, now here an activator bionator type of functional appliance is useful. So for your class 2 div 2 activator bionator, for class 2 div 1 twin block. Can you memorize these two appliance names? This can be an absolute next question in ADC September exams. Herbst appliance is not recommended because it tends to intrude upper molars and can worsen your deep bite. So Herbst appliance is not indicated. Activator bionator for class 2 div 2, twin block for class 2 div 1. Can you memorize these two things, please? Right? So activator bionator type here and your twin block for your class 2 div 1. So what is the goal of your functional appliance treatment? To correct your skeletal class 2 problem by differential growth of the jaws, particularly addressing your mandibular retrusion. It will allow your mandible to grow forward. You also want to increase the lower facial height because this guy would be an horizontal grower, so lower facial height is less. So you also want to give an aesthetic facial height, right? So with your bite correction, deep bite correction by preventing incisors erupting and allowing your molars to extrude, you're also increasing the lower facial height. Okay? So you're correcting the class 2 skeletally and you're also correcting facial height by allowing the molars to also supraerupt. Understood? Both ways. All right, so then comes our anterior open bite, which is a malocclusion in which one or more of your upper and lower anterior teeth fail to overlap vertically. It is opposite of deep bite. There is no vertical overlap here. It is a clinical finding again, not a diagnosis, because you have to understand why this happened. Is it a skeletal problem, tooth eruption problem, soft tissue problem, tongue posture and function problem, or occlusal contact? So you can bring back your tongues here now, and this is where your tongues are enrolled. Okay. So what is the possible cause? It can be skeletal, it can be soft tissue, it can be Also habits, mouth breathings, and localized failure of alveolar development. Let's talk about all these interesting causes. So now, when you are treating your anterior open bite, because the problems can be combined, skeletal, habit, soft tissue dysfunction, or localized eruption disturbances, that is why the treatment should aim not just to close the bite, but to eliminate the underlying cause. Do you agree with me on that? And it will develop whenever the eruption of your anterior teeth is prevented or vertical growth exceeds the ability of the incisors to maintain contact. So, in vertical growers, where the mandible grew so much so that the full eruption of incisors still is not able to vertically meet. So, skeletally, it is coming from your vertical growth pattern. Clear for everyone? It's not more than a anteroposterior class 2 or class 3 problem. It is more of a skeletal vertical growth pattern problem. That is why no functional appliance will work here, because it is not an anteroposterior problem. Myofunctional appliances work on the anteroposterior growth of the mandible. It is a vertical growth problem, so functional appliance will not work. Easy peasy or no? So when it is skeletal and vertical, and functional appliance will not work because there is no deficiency of mandible growth, there is an excessive mandible growth. Can anyone imagine what the treatment would be here? Yes, sometimes headgear with chin cup, but usually Anika, that is working when you are diagnosing it way before it has happened. Then you can reduce it. Once this much has happened, can you put a chin cup and think that mandible will shrink? After the vertical growth has occurred, do you think this vertical growth pattern, if identified while happening, you can still correct it? But once it has become an open bite, once it has become a vertical grower, a facial height is increased, can any chin cup shrink it? So dentally, you will correct fixed appliance therapy and orthodontic surgery. Wonderful, Pinky. 10 points on that. So it would require surgery after growth completion. Okay. So along with the fixed appliance therapy, you would require surgery. Now another soft tissue cause can be tongue thrusting or persistent digit sucking, right? So usually tongue thrusting was believed to be causing it, but now usually tongue comes to rest against the palate during swallowing, right? When there is an existing open bite, it becomes a postural tongue thrust rather than an actual etiology. Can you please pay attention to that? That this is tongue thrust is not actually a habit. It is a habitual posture of the tongue because of an existing anterior open bite. Can you please pay attention? This is an actual exam test concept. It is not an actual etiology. It is a factor seen with open bite. Can you learn the difference between the two? Tongue thrust, it actually becomes that it comes to be as a secondary developed adaptation of the tongue in that space. So actual cause can be digit sucking. A prolonged thumb or finger sucking can actually push the incisors and can allow posterior teeth to over erupt because kind of like raises the bite. So and proclines the upper incisors, retroclines the lower incisors, and also produces anterior open bite. So your thumb sucking, no, not really, Donna. It is a secondarily developed problem. Okay. Now, a persistent digit sucking can cause increased overjet, anterior open bite, and also posterior cross bites. Can you all remember? These are the three problems that can develop with digit sucking: increased overjet, anterior open bite, and posterior cross bite. Not directly related, yes, but seen secondarily to it. Once the open anterior open bite is established, Anika, tongue comes and lies there as a habitual posture. So it is not like a tongue, it becomes, yeah, so it develops secondary to anterior open bite rather than the causing factor of anterior open bite. Another factor is mouth breathing. Chronic mouth breathing can also cause a low tongue posture, and altered muscle balance can cause increased vertical facial growth and posterior tooth over eruption. It is also usually a contributory factor rather than a sole factor. Then comes your localized failure of alveolar development. Sometimes your anterior alveolar bone in the maxilla can fail to develop because of the anterior teeth do not erupt normally if there is ankylosis or eruption failure, right? So what is the, let's see a case example here of anterior history. There is a patient called Gerald, a 11-year-old boy presented to you with no contact between his upper and lower incisors, making it difficult to bite food with his front teeth. He was embarrassed while eating because he had to tear food using his posterior teeth. He also complained of a lisp. Now, please know this is important, which is he attributed to the position of his front teeth. His parents reported that his incisors have never met since eruption of the permanent teeth, and the gap had gradually become more noticeable. Importantly, there was no history of thumb sucking or digit sucking, making a habit induced open bite less likely for him. So his presentation symptoms were difficulty in biting, speech problems with a lisp, poor aesthetics, and most common presenting complaints of your anterior open bite. Now, a careful history helps identify whether this is skeletal, habit related, or functional. So, because there was no history of thumb or digit sucking, can we rule out the habit related, right? And then comes our, and tongue also we know is only the secondary factor. Tongue thrusting is also not responsible. It is only secondarily as a habitual posture. It is a, and can you see the side? Can you see the side face of Gerald? What can you appreciate? It is a long facial height. Lower anterior facial height is too high. He's a vertical grower. So he's a very classic case of vertical grower, right? So myofunctional appliance therapy will not work for him. You will do his extraoral examination and you will do the functional examination. You will check his swallowing pattern. You will check the speech for him as well, right? So when you did the swallowing pattern, there whenever there is a space between upper and lower anterior teeth, swallowing is likely to be achieved by forward positioning of the tongue between the anterior teeth to achieve the oral seal, right? So to achieve the anterior seal, the tongue moves forward into this space as a habit. So this is not actually a pre-existing tongue thrust, but because of the anterior open bite, tongue utilizes this space during swallowing to achieve the anterior seal. Is that clear for everyone now? So that in exam, I don't want anyone to mark, oh, tongue thrust caused this. No, this was happened because of skeletal problem and tongue just accommodated. Is it crystal clear for everybody? Please. Right? So this tongue thrust was considered adaptive and secondary rather than a primary cause because there was no history of habits in this patient and he has a marked skeletal discrepancy. Then also you will assess his speech. He complained that he had a lisp, which commonly occurs because air escapes the anterior space between the sounds of S and Z. So, S sound and Z sound will create a lisp. You can ask him to recreate by asking him to count from 60 to 70 or say Mississippi. That can help you understand what is the degree of lisp. Then you will do intraoral examination for him, right? So intraoral examination should be done. You found there was mild generalized gingivitis, caries free dentition, mild spacing of the upper and lower anterior teeth, class 1 incisor relationship, anterior open bite. There was a gap of 5 millimeters. and class 3 molar relationship bilaterally. The amount of open bite should always be recorded, but it should never be considered as your final diagnosis because the diagnosis has to come from your skeletal pattern for the underlying cause. So when you did to understand what was the underlying cause, you took OPG, you took lateral ceph. So OPG showed there was normal tooth development, there was no localized eruption abnormalities. So there was no localized alveolar failure in the maxilla, right? All the maxillary anterior teeth were fully erupted. There was no ankylosis, no failure of eruption of any teeth. All teeth were there. And there was no localized alveolar failure of maxillary anterior palate. Then on lateral ceph, it was indicated that he had an increased mandibular plane angle. Is it correlated with his clinical facial profile? Do you all agree with that? That he would have an increased mandibular plane angle. And he had increased lower facial height. Lateral ceph confirmed that, but on this facial profile, can you please appreciate that? And his maxilla and mandible relationship was your class 2. So his skeletal relationship was no, Madni, no. His skeletal was class 2. His molars were class 3, but his skeletal was class 2. Yes. And there was slight proclination of his incisors. Okay. And yes, that you learn from these things, Madni, that these can't be derived from the molar angle, from the molar classification. You cannot derive what is the skeletal classification. Okay, just keep that in mind. It's a good learning point. So these findings confirm he has a skeletal anterior open bite, which was caused because of not an excessive mandible horizontal growth. So that means his anterior maxilla access was not horizontally, but mandible access was vertically. Yes or no, please? So because he was class 2 skeletally, that means if the mandible was horizontally growing excessively, he would rather be class 3, no? When mandible is excess. But it's not. He's rather class 2. Because his mandibular excess growth was in a vertical growth pattern, not in horizontal or anteroposterior growth pattern. Okay? So, you understood that it's a skeletal anterior open bite caused by excessive vertical facial growth rather than any habit-induced dental open bite. So he was diagnosed as a skeletal anterior open bite associated with a class 2 skeletal pattern and increased lower anterior facial height with excessive vertical mandibular growth. Tongue thrust was observed as secondary to existing open bite rather than the primary cause. Clear for everyone? Diagnosis is clear. Skeletal is class 2, right? Right? So molars can be present anteriorly, no? That doesn't dictate because that is your dental relationship that happens due to arch size and tooth size discrepancy. Okay, and incisors in class 1 because they are not ahead of each other or behind each other. You know, incisor relationship is by overjet and overbite, right? And then molar relationship is with the position of the mesiobuccal cusp, right? So these are your dental situations which are dictated by the tooth size and arch size discrepancies. Do we agree with that? That whether it's canine relationship, whether it's molar relationship or incisor relationship, dentally they are depicted by the tooth size and arch size. Skeletal classification is depicted by the jaw growth pattern, A and B angles. Clear or not? So Diana, class 1 and class 2 is skeletal also and dental also. Dental you find intraorally, skeletal you find on the lateral ceph, and they can be different. Is it clear for everyone? Skeletal is always derived by lateral ceph. Dental you assess by the molar relationship, by canine relationship, and by incisor relationship. In the same patient, he can have all the different incisor, canine, molar, and skeletal. Okay? Same patient can have a different skeletal, different molar, different canine, and a different incisor classification. There is no hard and fast rule that they all will be same. Is that crystal clear for everyone? Same thing happened for Gerald. He was skeletally class 2, molar wise class 3, canine was not given, but incisor was class 1. So incisor and molar are dental and lateral ceph is skeletal. Understood or not? So your dental corrections are done with your orthodontics fixed therapy, but your skeletal corrections are done with your your functional appliances during the growth period. So based on your molar relationship, you will not choose your functional appliance. Your functional appliances will be selected based on your lateral ceph skeletal classifications. Am I making full sense here for everybody? So we were talking about his management now. The diagnosis was clear for everyone now, na? So treatment should always address the underlying cause, not just the space between the incisors. And unless there is an anterior open bite due to a habit, treatment is complex. Usually when it is with your habit, it is simple. You correct the habit, you stop the habit, and then you correct the dental problem. Then it's easier with the habit. But when it's due to skeletal problems, it's more complex. So Gerald's problem was skeletal because of a vertical growing mandible. Habit breaking appliance will not be successful because he doesn't have habit as such. Gerald has anteroposterior and vertical skeletal problems. He also has a downward and backward pattern of facial growth, which has given him an anterior open bite. Okay. So during the growth period, if the patient is still growing, treatment aims to modify the vertical facial growth. So somebody wrote that, Afra, I guess you wrote that chin cups and all. So if the patient was still growing, you could have used the treatment which could have modified the vertical facial growth using a functional or vertical control appliance, which very well everybody said headgear and chin cup, right? Yes? High pull, absolutely. Now, in that case, high pull not necessarily would be incorporated, Dave. It has to be used when there is maxillary excess, right, Dave? So, whether it's only with the vertical control or pull also depends whether there is maxillary excess or not. Actually, in the thousands of ortho, I've explained all the headgears and their uses with all the pulling, pushing movement with my hands. I showed it on my face, everybody, if you remember. So, yeah. That's where you can learn more about the headgears. But during growth, if the mandible was still growing, you could have controlled the vertical growth using a functional or a vertical control appliance. Often then later you will do with fixed appliance therapy and close the bite. But if the growth completion is if the growth is completed, then this discrepancy would require orthodontic treatment and orthognathic surgery to correct the vertical jaw discrepancy, right? So retention is particularly important because anterior open bite has a high tendency to relapse, especially if abnormal tongue posture or the vertical growth tendencies are still persisting. Long-term retention and management of functional habits should also be done. And if the anterior open bite is caused by a persistent thumb sucking or digit sucking, in that case, a habit breaking appliance also has to be given. Initially, you can manage it by like counseling the patient and persuasion. But if persuasion is not working, then definitely an upper removable appliance, which is given on the palatal arch, is provided to the patient for the habit breaking, right? So you can give a an upper removable appliance or a palatal arch modified to break the thumb sucking habit. All right, so that would be it for the examination, diagnosis, knowing the underlying causes, skeletal cause, soft tissue cause, where to drop the tongues, where not to drop the tongues. I hope you all agree with that. Overjet and open bite. Justina, yes, I know, but we because you're not doing orthodontics MDS here, so I think that would be sufficient. When to overjet and open bite can coexist with thumb sucking. Yes, the flaring of the incisors and the non-meeting both can coexist with the posterior crossbite as well, Aisha. In that case, it would be an anterior open bite and an incisor relationship will become class 2, right? Right? Is that also clear? Incisor relation will become class 2, Aisha, in that case. Functional appliances only given in growing patients. Donna, we did so many questions, if you remember, in our UAF to ortho. Right? This is a very whole, yes, different point of view. Absolutely agreed with you. So, class 2 div 1, straight high pull. If the patient has class 2 div 1, use twin block. Class 2 div 1, we use twin block. Yes, right? See, depends what do you want to work on? Is there maxillary access? Is there mandibular retrusion? Your high pull gears, head gears that you're talking about, high pull, are for Dyna for maxillary access. In our cases, patient had mandibular deficiency. So you don't use a high pull headgear for mandibular deficiencies. They are for your maxillary access. Whereas your twin block is for mandibular deficiencies. Okay? So you're mixing. So your headgear of high pull is for your maxillary access. How his dental molar relationship is class 3 because his mandibular molars are ahead of class. Your maxillary molars probably because of your, as I said, tooth size and jaw size or arch size discrepancies. It is 11 to 12 in your 10 to 12 in your females, right? And 12 to 14 in boys. So it comes later in boys, sooner in girls. All right, so just reiterating, those who are not enrolled with us, we are bringing our August public mock, which would be available this weekend. Team will share the details with you on the Facebook group as well as the page. You can get our app and be ready for our August public mock, which is difficulty level medium to high, I'd say. So yes, you would be tested on that. Final diagnosis was skeletal class 2 and no habit, so skeletal class 2 related and vertical grower mandible. So yeah, that led to open bite. And you can send me more questions. I will love to answer your more questions. I know I've skipped through a lot of questions. Please send me on WhatsApp and I will be happy to help you with all your questions from today's class or any other class. And I hope you enjoyed it. It was an amazing class and we have one more class to go next week, although we will have our mock discussion class. So ortho series class will happen after that. Next one is our going to be mock discussion class, right? After the August public mock, we'll have our mock discussion class. Then comes our, I'm exhausted. Then comes our ortho series too. Today was good, absolutely. I'm so glad you guys loved it. Smiley, I haven't planned it yet. Although after ortho series, after prosto series, we did make our prosto, but because that percentage had gone higher, and ortho series, ortho percentage hasn't gone higher, but the change that there was a change in the kind of questions they were asking. So what I'm planning to do is I will incorporate these topics in your grand mock. Okay, so whatever new ortho topics are being asked, I will add it to the grand mock, and I will also give you this topic related SBQ for practice on Facebook group tomorrow. Okay? Yes, SC. So absolutely there would be an SBQ for today's class practice tomorrow. If you missed any concepts, please revise it by tomorrow and then take that SBQ. I had question. Pathophysio of lateral luxation leading up to ankylosis and external root resorption, please. Pathophysiology, I mean, Nishant, first of all, in traumatic guidelines, exam will never ask you the pathophysiology of trauma because it's all inflammation and tears of PDL and repair, right? That's not pathophysiology or pathohistopathology. Exam never asks. ADC never asks. Even trauma guidelines don't include them. I think briefly, if you go initially in the beginning of the trauma guidelines, there are few pages where they have talked about the pathohistopathology. But see, ultimately, it's all about what? Because of the lateral luxation, what will happen is there will be tear in the PDL, there will be some tear in the alveolar bone, in the lamina dura, right? The cortical part, and then repair will happen, right? And with that repair, sometimes it can lead to external resorption as well. And sometimes that could only be temporary and transient resorption. I'm sure, Nishant, you have also read about the transient apical breakdown, right? So, transient apical breakdown is also associated with these injuries, but that is a body's own phenomena to break down and then repair. Agreed. So pathophysiology is underlying same inflammation and trauma and injury and repair. But sometimes the repair is controlled and reversible. It rebuilds the tissue. But when that doesn't happen, and if in any case infection or bacteria enters through the sulcus, then it can become an uncontrolled external inflammatory resorption and doesn't have to be with infection, Nishant. External inflammatory resorption by definition can also still become just with inflammation of injury. Doesn't require bacteria also. And ankylosis is also a kind of a response to that inflammation, but instead of external resorption, which is an osteoclastic activity per se, it can become an osteoblastic activity and lay down the bone and leads to ankylosis. If you compare both, which is worse, which is better? Both are bad. Ultimately, you will lose the jaw growth. Ultimately, when you try to extract, it can lead to bone loss, and it can lead to even the submerged teeth. But when you compare, which is the better devil or which is the worse, right? So it's the inflammatory external resorption because that can lead to loss of tooth, right? If not controlled. So in lateral luxation, whenever you see the sign of inflammatory external resorption, what is your first thing that you do? You start immediately RCT. In an avulsion, when you see external inflammatory resorption, that has to go for extraction. That's a hopeless tooth, right? All right, and yes, we took a free resorption class, I guess, but it's not on Facebook anymore because Facebook doesn't keep the live videos for longer than 1 month. I don't know whether that resorption class is available on YouTube or not, but I can talk to the team. Oh, Madni, it's there. Nishant, I have taken a class on all the resorptions related to traumatic injuries, and I have actually covered everything you need to know about them. So, if you can, team, if you can share the YouTube channel link here, and Nishant can actually go and follow the resorption class there, and all your pathophysiological questions would be answered there. Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope that helps. Ortho Series 1 SBQ. I shared the last week only. It's on the group. All right. All right. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see everybody enrolled, non-enrolled for our monthly free August public mock this weekend. And then I'll see you on Tuesday for the public mock discussion. Please join the group. Please join the page and get the details for mock. And if you're joining, and if you're planning to join for March 27, we have all the seats open for March 27. Even September 27 seats are filling up. So you can join both the courses, both the batches. After today's class, I will also upload the detailed hot notes of these today's topic on the app for our enrolled candidates. That will also be resolved. What else? We have to meet on Thursday and Friday for our UF2 classes. That's also going full swing. This is week 16 going on. So by week 18, we will be completely done with our UF2 classes. And then you're getting prepped for Grand Mock. What else? Ninja Mock, Health Promotion 2. Yeah, sounds about we have a very, very busy week. And then Saturday and Sunday, you have TG revision classes. When we don't get cases, for example, in the hot notes, can we get those two? We don't get cases, for example. Which cases? The ones that I cover in the classes, they are there in the hot notes as well, Mira. No, no, they are. Did you check the last ortho one? Wherever it is on these classes, they will be on the hot notes too. They are not removed from there. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Madni. Yes, they are there. All right. Thank you, everyone. It was great catching up today and completing our second part of the ortho series. I hope you had fun learning as much as I had fun teaching. And then we have a lot to do. Last 6 weeks to go before exam. Six, almost 7 weeks. Yeah. So we have a lot to do, a lot of specialized mocks to practice. We have to also complete our UF2, and then we also have to prep for grand mocks, right? All right. Thank you so much, guys. And I will see you on Thursday. Bye bye. Thank you. Bye. Good night.